Hello to my human family. Before I start with Jeremiah Traeger, or Jerb the Humanist as he's known online, a couple of announcy thingies. Um, Now I know since this is going out New Year's Eve, most of you are going to watch this on some replay at some point or another, but you'll see it hopefully before all this goes into effect. I'm still gonna after this one. I'm still gonna be doing Tuesday nights, but I'm switching it up to 7:30 Eastern instead of 8 o'clock, and instead of Friday, the 2 Fridays a month, I'm gonna have 2 Saturday interviews a month, and the other 2 or 3 Saturdays. Well, it's gonna be every other Saturday, so just whatever I'm trying to say. Every other Saturday is going to be the interview, and the alternate Saturdays will be an actual scripted thing, because I really have a lot of scripts sitting around here waiting to be recorded. This has been an awesome year, and I couldn't have done it without the people who have been watching the thing. Well, I could have, but, who would have cared other than me? And in the end, I'm the only one who counts anyway, so you're all robots sent here to test me. Last week I had Callie Wright on, and her interview with me, there were two people who interviewed me, very close together, and the way both of them handled it was different, but it was very important in that I really just wanted to try it. I wanted to try it once or twice and get it out of my system, and apparently that's most of what my channel is now. So Callie Wright was on last week, and this week we have Jerb the Humanist, Jeremiah Traeger. Hello, Jeremiah. How do you like it better?
Oh, Jerb is good. It's a good internet nickname, and it goes well when the signals are processing into your brain vat that's being fed into your phenomenal consciousness. So goes
Oh,
goes 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 into the electrodes better, if that makes sense.
I keep my epiphenomenal brain. My epiphenomenal. See, I'm messing up the joke. My epiphenomenal thought patterns in a pen.
Mm-hmm. It's a much more concise waveform, so
Yes,
it's easier to upload. So I'm doing great. How are you, Chris?
I am doing very well. Um, Except for messing up the initial joke, and I've had that sitting there, and you kind of set me up for it anyway. That's what threw me for doing the joke.
Gotta run with it. You can't say you're a brain in a vat and not run with the bit, Chris. You gotta run with the bit.
Well, I'm semi-epiphenomenal.
You're semi-epiphenomenal. Oh, see, I'm all epiphenomenal. That's probably why the disconnect happened, because the ports were incompatible, and that caused a faulty upload. And so it's okay because nobody else exists. So you only messed up the joke for your own consciousness, and you can move forward and move on to like a solipsistic arrogance, as in I'm the only one who matters, so y'all can't fuck with me anyway.
Well, solipsism is my middle name, and my first name and my last name, really, too.
Oh, okay.
You just think it's Christiane Lanza Abbey.
Your parents were not very creative then, so your co-brains in a vat. What was it, like a SCOBY? Like, I don't know if any of your friends brew kombucha, but my roommate does, and it's just like this patty in a jar, sort of. It's a fungus, but it's like a patty, and it's constantly like reproducing into like separate little patties. So that's all I can think about now. That's what I'm just going to think of your brain every time I look at my roommate's fungal tea fermentation.
Well, the slime, they have found the conscious slime mold, so.
Yep.
you
Slime
know,
molds are pretty smart, but I wouldn't know anything about that. That's way beyond what I know. So
well, I know you've been kind of just hanging out, doing nothing. Nothing important has
nothing
happened to you.
important. No, not
I,
much to say. Just been farting around.
I mean, I heard there was one thing, but I'll let you just tell people what it is.
Yeah. So for all the people who are subscribed to your channel and my channel, all of them, all thousands of them. The last time we chatted, I believe, was in August.
Yeah.
And I talked a bit about like getting a video up. I think you can correct me if you remember better, but I said I'd get a video up and then I wouldn't do anything for the rest of the semester. Well, I didn't even do that, but the reason was because I was finishing up my PhD career this past fall. And on December 12th, I defended. And what the defense is, I've written, a very long document about, I think it's 140 pages, containing all the work that I've been working on for the past 5 years in my PhD career. And then I do a presentation to a committee, and then they ask me questions based on my dissertation and my presentation. And then they pass you or they fail you. But of course, I passed. So now I'm practically a doctor until once the paperwork goes through, I'm officially Dr. Jerb. So that's the story as of now.
How long? Okay, I actually don't know this part about it. How long do you know after they question you? How long do you know before you find out? How long do you go before you find out whether they passed or failed you? I don't know why I'm having trouble talking today. Talking is my job.
Yeah, usually they kick you out of the room for about 5 minutes. And the thing is, at least in my department, and I think broadly in STEM, the whole defense is sort of a ceremony. There are barriers beforehand, like other oral exams, that you're more likely to fail at. And my parents came out, there's a reception for these defenses. So like, it's very rare that people fail these. So like, you're going to pass, even though you have that voice at the back of your head that's like, what if you don't? But they make you leave the room, and then they, deliberate for 5 minutes, but mostly they probably just catch up on, football or something and then come out. I don't know what professors do in there. Maybe I'll find out one day if I become one.
Yeah. So there was no handling of the goat skull and the walking with one pant leg up and stuff.
I mean, you sacrifice a virgin right before you present, but that's part of the ceremony. So no big deal.
Well, our incel has definitely made that much easier.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So that's what I've been up to. And in the past few weeks, I've had a lot of time to do nothing, which is great. Though, the holidays have happened too. My parents have visited and everything. So haven't had much time outside of that. And it's great. And I'll be looking for jobs. And funnily enough, people get this impression that once you get an advanced degree, people are like busting down the doors to get you to work for them. And that's not really the case. It's, I got an engineering degree, which is a fairly in-demand job, but it's not more in demand since I got a PhD. I'm about as in demand as I was 5.5 years ago, except the types of job I can get have changed, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah. So, what was the name? Because you actually sent it to me, and like I said I had my college roommate once sent me just a letter that had his or that has his thesis title on it, and said, "Don't try and understand it, just admire it."
Yeah. Wait, you wanted to find the title?
Yes,
Let's
you're.
see. I have to go. I actually have to. The closest place I can think of is our chat. Oh, I found it. Okay, it's
I was
single.
about to go.
Yeah, single molecule dynamics of interfacial DNA hybridization, kinetics, and transport. And basically, what that refers to is my work. It's fairly fundamental. I wouldn't really call it an engineering thesis, even though my degree, and it will be in chemical engineering. It's a fairly fundamental physics type study, but basically what I looked at was DNA moving around on the surface, and it's useful in a sense for a lot of interfacial applications, like a lot of sensing systems. Say there's a mutation that might cause some genetic disease or some mutation associated with cancer, and you want to detect that DNA sequence. One way a lot of people try and test DNA sequences is DNA is comprised of various strings of sequences or codes in a
Right.
metaphorical sense. And that code only binds with another particular sequence. So what you do is you flow DNA strands in solution across a surface, across different sequences, across surfaces where on the surfaces you have other DNA with the other sequences on it. And if the two strands bind together, then it produces some sort of signal, and then you know what type of DNA sequence it has. My work wasn't studying that in particular, but it was studying binding at interfaces and motion. And what my work was is ostensibly useful for is understanding the physics of that particular system to help optimize that type of um, engineering or those types of devices.
Well,
Yeah. So,
so you're
the,
making it easier to find a cure for me.
yeah, also making it easier for biotech companies to profit, which, whatever. Um, that's one of the things I've become a little more cynical of is, a lot of engineering projects aren't necessarily, um, let me back up. Like at the beginning of my undergrad career, in engineering, they really like to hype you up. They say you are going to be the ones who are going to solve all the problems in the world. We've got climate change, we've got cancer. You are the people who are going to be able to solve the problems. And to some extent, that's true, because we will need engineering to help develop better nuclear technologies and renewable energy and a lot of medicines. But what you end up doing is doing work that helps, you know, companies and the powers that be keep functioning. So you end up being trained to be sort of a cog in the machine, which is sort of why I wanted to keep on doing academic work. Because even though there are constraints to being able to do the type of research you'd absolutely love to do, in a sense, you are more free and have the academic freedom to study what you want to find. So hopefully, I've done this biotech and physics-based work now. I'm hoping to shift more towards something to help save the planet at least. I don't know if it'll help the planet much, but it'll at least be a weight off my conscience in doing something that I at least hope helps.
No, I suppose you could vat grow rich people for us communists to eat.
Yeah. I'll
I have. That was the first thing I thought when I saw this. Oh, he's growing.
yeah. I wonder, like, I don't know, maybe just like design some sort of microbe. Like, what is it? It's like the opposite of a Grey Goo, if you know what that is, if you know what that refers to. But instead of just consuming everything, it turns everything into food, so everybody can be fed. That'd be nice.
It's well, that's bread for everyone. You're
Yeah.
very Kropotkin.
Yeah. There we are. The Conquest for Bread. Yeah. I should read that now that I don't have anything to do. And
Oh, Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's great, and I live by it. But
Yeah.
it's oh my god, it's just one of those. You ever actually read Descartes
No, I haven't.
or um not the other guy whose name is always a joke? Uh, oh, for fuck's sake!
It's not Newton, is it?
Not Newton. The
Or
one.
Sartre, Nietzsche.
No, the really dry one. Kant, Immanuel Kant.
Oh, Kant. Yeah, I have
God.
not. I have not read him at all, and I don't particularly plan to. I don't know. From what I understand, he's a very. I mean, he is a very powerful writer and thinker, um, and I think there's a certain amount of respect you can gain from him. It's just that particular type of meta ethics doesn't seem particularly useful for me. Um, and over time, uh, as scientific and political, you know, positions for me have changed. I've become like less focused on meta ethics overall, even though I think ethics is very important. And in contrast to like STEM, I think STEM is very important, and like understanding the ontology and the epistemology of the world. But unless
Yeah.
there's like a proper action, supporting something like that, you're going to end up like something like Dr. Manhattan from The Watchmen, where you'll be this brilliant genius with all the power in the world, but you won't be able to do anything meaningful. Like I think in the comics they note like you failed to stop JFK from being assassinated, stuff like that. Like there's no action, action backing that up. It's not good enough to know the fact of the matter, if that makes sense.
Well, let's see. It's March 2018. I'm on a stream with Jerb the Humanist. It is August 2018. I'm on a stream with Jerb the Humanist. It is. It's, nothing ends, Adrian. Nothing ever ends.
Yeah. I think it's
Yeah,
2019, by the way.
did I say 20? Oh, I said 2018.
Yeah, I hope I hope between March 2019 and now I've put out like one of my own videos, or else I will just sound like I've been making excuses for the past half a year or so, for
I
the
can.
past 8 months.
I'm getting so used to it being 2020 that I've already completely forgotten what year it currently is.
Mm-hmm.
But I could put this out last year because I can just reprogram the robots.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's always that possibility.
You can go back with YouTube and fuck with the release dates and say,
Actually, yeah, you can. I can say this was recorded up to about 5 years ago, I think.
"Oh, really?
Yeah.
Technology is great."
Yeah, I can't believe I'm having trouble with the basics here, and you, when I was on your show the first time,
Mm-hmm.
I was very uncomfortable with the idea of being on it, but you made me very comfortable with
Oh.
being on it, which was extremely important just for myself and my whatever you call it. Oh, transness.
Mm-hmm.
Which I wanted to just not be ever on camera again.
Uh-huh.
And so here I am, I'm messing up pretty much in the same ways I did before, and it's like when a kid goes home after years
Uh-huh.
and still bumps into the same garbage can that's on the side of the road.
No, I get it.
Things I should know better about.
Mm-hmm.
At least they mentioned Kropotkin, for God's sakes. I'm officially bred to.
Oh yeah. Wait, so in terms of your political compass, like that's sort of the theory you get backed up, you use to back up your thought. Is that something you would align with most closely? Is that your favorite revolutionary Russian commie?
I'm, yeah. Um, I've got kind of a Kafka complex going on, so I'm a
Uh
little
huh.
more German than Russian. But
Uh huh.
um, I I'm actually a gradualist, but don't tell anybody.
Okay, I won't. We'll keep it secret.
Yeah.
I could make a very unpleasant joke about the follower size between both of us, but keep going.
Yeah. Well, you've got. I actually didn't check your follower size. I don't usually.
I think it's barely over 100 still, and I haven't put in any other work up until for a while, so I don't anticipate it's grown for a while. But I'll be putting out a video soon now that I've got the time. So, uh,
Good.
and actually, it is fairly related to what I was just talking about. Um, I might, I've got footage in there that I've filmed back in July. It's got some pointed criticisms of skepticism as a community, not of the philosophy.
Yeah.
Just how man, because that's what matters in real life. It's not necessarily the underlying thought if the manifestation um, is very problematic. But there it is kind of a criticism of centrism in a sense, because a lot of the skeptical, folks that call themselves skeptics at least, um, they're so focused on epistemology and the ontology of everything that they it's like there are several values that people have in trying to make a world better, and one of them is understanding like truth value, and truth value is a very important consideration. Like you can't let what you want to be true override what actually is true, and you have to act in accordance of nature, or else whatever you try to do won't work.
Right.
But there is a sort of sense in which they cordon off that sort of truth value as the only important one and ignore practically anything else, which I find fairly problematic. Uh, it's like you don't. It's very frustrating because they'll treat ideology as some sort of like it's always necessarily something you just can avoid, as if you know as if you know there's facts and then there's ideology, and there's no interplay between those two whatsoever, and you always just want to go off the facts. And furthermore, it is fairly ideologically driven, and it does tend to be a sort of technocratic neoliberal centrism that they tend to promote, because there's this sort of perspective that there's the right wing and the left wing, and both of them are wrong, but if you're not extreme, you're in the middle. But the fact of the matter is the middle is relative to wherever the society is at right now. So basically it may in fact be one of the most ideological positions, in the sense that you are at the whims of everybody else's ideology, and you're just assuming that one type of ideology is correct. In this case, just sort of the neoliberal establishment that's been put in place for the past 30 years. And that's kind of where skepticism is at right now, even just mostly implicitly. But, it will assume a lot of the assumptions in the culture seem to tie into that, and it tends to ignore any ethical considerations for a society that goes out of it.
Well, what will happen a lot of the times I've seen is people will identify this thing here as an extreme. Say, well, let's say something that actually happened in the skeptic community, feminism, as an extreme, and which, I mean, it can be, but it's not usually. But if you start identifying it more and more as an extreme, your center keeps moving towards the right, as as more and more people get lumped into the extremist category, and you keep wanting to be in the center, and eventually you wind up running for UKIP.
Yeah. And extreme and not extreme are not necessarily, it's all relative. And I was going to say something, but I forgot exactly the point I was trying to make. I mean, there are some extreme feminists that, of course, we wouldn't agree with. If you're going to have a very cis-normative feminism, that's something I would consider extreme, and I wouldn't want to at all align myself with that. And of course, there's also, a very, hashtag, lady boss, capitalist feminism. That's many, in some senses, some would call it extreme, and I wouldn't call it extreme, but it's been sort of, enveloped in a lot of corporate culture, where it's like you're just reproducing the same exploitative cultures. And in, other fields like, the military, you're just, making sure the person flying the bomb is a woman. And like, that's actually, from my perspective, fairly extreme, but it's a wholly accepted position in many mainstream parts of society. And the relevant, hi Ari.
Hi.
Hey. So, the relative components of what is there to criticize are very dependent on, one's ideological position. From, say, my perspective, I don't want to keep reproducing the same exploitative structures that are already in place. So I do not want, diversity at the top of the military chain. I think that needs to be dismantled. To somebody running for UKIP, women at the top of the military chain are bad because it's forced diversity or some bullshit like that. And then from like a fairly establishment view, it's a good thing because, diversity and no thought beyond that, like just diversity, we're going to put women in charge of the military and in charge of drone strikes or something like that. So extreme in that sense, it's very clear to me why that's relative. And anyway, that's more or less where I'm coming from in terms of that. I'm recording, by the way, I'm recording at my partner's house. So I'm just seeing the cat and the partner walk out of the bedroom now. So.
It's all right. Hello, Ari.
Chris says hello. So we just saw cats this afternoon, and I think Ari had to take a 2-hour nap to recover.
So, then she should be the control group, because I actually couldn't fall asleep. I said I was going to take a nap, and we'd see whose nightmares were worse.
Yep. Yep. So I'll get back to you on the nightmares. You can share it on your next episode if we have any. Okay.
Well, yeah, you're the one I'm going to check in with every once in a while. You're going to be my anchor.
Okay, sounds good. I'll make sure you don't go too extreme.
Well, that's it.
I'll make sure you're not a turf.
Oh, well, I don't actually. Oh wait, no, Blair White. Never mind.
Blair White's totally a TERF, and I've known other TERFs in the atheist skeptosphere, like trans TERFs. So,
Yes.
uh, though it does. I guess in those cases they tend to either be like more trans medicalist, so
Yeah.
or NB phobic. So, but
I
yeah.
I'm not. I don't get any of. I don't understand any of that. Although since we last talked,
Mm-hmm.
there is now another person in the house, so we
Mm-hmm.
now have one of each. There's trans man, trans woman, and non-binary.
Mm-hmm.
So we outnumber the cis here,
Oh
which
yeah. Well, Ari can't hear you over there because I got my headphones on, so they don't know that you can develop an alliance and overthrow me. So,
well, yeah, it's been very useful. I gotta say,
yeah.
the cis were running the house, and
Yeah.
but no,
Well, then that'll be my cue to be like, the cis are getting out of hand. That's not conducive. That's not conducive to developing a strong working class movement. It's being
no,
divisive. So,
no. I'm an inclusionary rebel. Can you be a gradualist revolutionary? Because I
ooh,
mean,
I think so. I think from what I understand, you can be. Uh, there's a form of pragmatism, which is not the same as like centrist neoliberal Joe Biden pragmatism, but like there's a very left-wing pragmatism that's not so caught up in, say, like a Marxist tradition, and of course, like say like a Marxist tradition would consider um, their pathway to revolution like a scientific one. That's what many of them consider it, which whatever. But there is a very pragmatic tradition. I'm forgetting. I'm blanking on the philosopher's name. Maybe the next time you
um,
put in a word. But
my
what is it?
brain,
Unger? What is it? Umberto Unger?
Umberto Eco.
Oh, and Umberto Eco. Yeah. Um,
Yes.
I don't know if gradualism is the right characteristic, but it's less explicitly revolutionary aligned.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not a guillotines in the streets person because
Mm-hmm.
partly because I'd be the first one being guillotined just because
Mm-hmm.
they don't they don't always go for the rich people first. They go for the easy targets.
Right. I think if you look into like the history of revolutions like that, the guillotines were not they weren't explicitly used on the ruling class. They were often used on the proles. So there's no guarantee that any sort of revolutionary act is going to lead to the outcomes you want. But another thing to point out, from what I understand, is that like a revolution is not like something that happens in a day. Um,
No,
like it can happen over a series of years. All that really needs to happen is some sort of paradigm shift in a social order, and that sort of thing happens with science too. There will be some sort of paradigm shift, and within one paradigm we've had one type of study and one way of thinking, and then after some sort of bold research comes out, then a new paradigm occurs, and then there's progress made under that paradigm.
well, the of all people for philosophy, or not entirely philosophy, but just
Mm-hmm.
more pop philosophy, I
Yeah.
guess. Elizabeth Warren's first book, I think it was 1993 or 1994,
Mm-hmm.
just like blew me away as far as the way I think about things. I almost fell into the Ayn Rand hole.
Mm-hmm.
And then I read Elizabeth Warren, and she saved me. So
I would not be surprised if there are a lot of people who almost became Randians and then got saved by people like Warren. um, Rand is an easy trap to get caught in, and I don't know why. Maybe it is the simplicity. Um, I don't think I ever was seriously at risk towards becoming that type of libertarian. But I did read an Anthem in high school. I was assigned it, and it really resonated with me, which makes sense for like a white, teenage boy. Um, but I think its simplicity is part of the problem, because there's like, the more you try to unpack it, the more you realize that, say, like, power structures that are exploitative don't always come with the label government on top of it. And yeah, and then there's BioShock. There's all the other standard critiques of it. You
yes.
gotta get somebody taking out the trash, and not everybody can be a captain of industry.
Well, there's the Bob the Angry Flower, which took out Atlas Shrugged in 8 panels. The cartoon Bob the Angry Flower.
Oh, I don't know that one.
Oh, I have to post it somewhere.
Okay.
It's the first Mrs. Abby found it for me, and she sent it to me one day, and I said, I must remember that this exists forever and ever, because it's brilliant. It's Atlas Shrugged 2 the next day.
Okay. I'll have to look at it after this is going. Okay, I think I see the comic, but I don't think reading it on the stream would be very conducive toward an entertaining stream. So I'll check that out later.
It's pretty easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
He did like 4 or 5 years worth of work, and that's the only one anybody remembers, which is sad, because it's actually quite good. And I apologize for looking around a lot. I'm looking for something specifically, which I wanted to hold up.
I do like the existential comics takes on Rand. I don't know if you read existential comics, but that's always fun.
Every time.
I also prefer his takes on Marx, like Marx as like a therapist or something, and like how he'll act like a therapist for the first half and then get upset because I think the solution to your anxiety is the overthrow of the bourgeois class. Things like that.
Yeah.
And then there's, what is it, Marx as a my favorite take from existential comics is Marx as the business consultant, like from Office Space, but instead of asking all the employees, like, what do you say you do here, he talks to the bosses and he's like, what would you say you do here? And like really grills down on what they do, which is practically nothing compared to the workers, and it's very funny.
I'm a huge fan of existential comics. I know I know Saturday morning breakfast cereal is the one that is most well known around. I like it all right, but existential comics fits my humor better.
Since this is ostensibly a stream about STEM and science, I have to ask you then, since we're talking about comics, what is your take on XKCD then? Have you read XKCD much?
I stopped because of political reasons. I am because I'm a writer in my real life.
Mm-hmm.
I have a huge problem with the death of the author idea
Mm-hmm.
because I plan on living forever, and I'll tell you anything.
Uh-huh.
So last Saturday, for instance, was really a pain in the ass for me. The J.K. Rowling thing.
Yeah.
But I did ask other author friends. I said, if I go for the death of the author idea, do I have to pay somebody or do I have to do it myself? So yeah, there were political problems that I couldn't overcome, which is unfortunate because I did like it, but I saw it going in a direction anyway that I didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
The political was starting to stream and spill into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I've read every one of his comics at this point, and I think there's sort of an immaturity that came with it.
Yeah.
Um, and that tied into a lot of my STEM work, and this ties into some of the things I was talking about earlier. But there was when you read XKCD, there's a very STEM lordy approach in that even the warning at the bottom of the comic was this comic has swears and nerd jokes, which means it's probably not appropriate for children or people who majored in humanities. And like that was something I got a kick out of when I was in high school or in college. But as time has gone on, I've been like, man, like in line with what I said about the job market as a engineering PhD candidate. I'm not going to solve the world's problems just by virtue of understanding engineering. Like, it's going to take a lot more work, and I think in many senses, many like humanities perspectives are going to be far more important towards developing and changing the world for the better, that simply knowing how to make a solar powered you know energy source or like more renewable batteries will not necessarily change.
Well, I've I mean, you knew from before my my major was neuroscience with neuropsychology as a specific.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess that crosses over between STEM and soft science.
I mean, I would say it's definitely a science,
Well,
unless Sam Harris did it.
yeah, I kind of Sam rooted for all of us. I have finally recently started saying what my credits hours would get me a degree in,
Mm-hmm.
which is theology,
Hmm.
which surprises the fuck out of just about everybody. I
Mm-hmm.
was a pretty committed Christian. I declined a degree
In theology.
in theology.
Yeah, I that's probably a good choice.
Because by the time I learned it, I didn't want to know it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so. That is the softest of the soft sciences, theology. You just make some shit up and defend it,
Oh,
you know.
yeah. And not too different from, say, dialectical materialists sometimes. So I'm sorry. Like, oh,
I th-
I hate to cast aspersions on them because, like, they are my allies, and there are many of them, like, say, in my graduate labor union, who follow that tradition. But like, I just don't understand it at all.
um it's it's very uh, best way to put it, I suppose, would be Talmudic. Um, since most of them would have come out of a religious background anyway. They This is what they know, and this is how they learned to work on a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't have that much of a problem with it, except for some of the conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, You know, I don't think you can. I don't think you can get to reality through argument. And the more I'm on Twitter, the more I
Yeah.
believe
I
that.
mean, it's not just argument, it's about like actual confrontation, but like I really there's something teleological about it, and I'm always skeptical about any sort of teleology. To some extent,
Yeah.
a lot of it is, you know, it's kind of its own form of self just so story. Like, you know, this type of society was built, and then there was a revolution, and then this society is built, as if there was just this one type of society that was built off another, and like just this one revolutionary act produced this transition. It all seems very spooky and metaphysical in a way that, you know, I can't really co-sign, but you know, maybe uh, to the best extent, I think it might be at least rhetorically useful in a way. Like it's a way to explain certain paradigm shifts and what people are working towards when trying to develop a movement. So, you know, that's the best I can say about it. And like, I really don't wish to cast aspersions on folks that align with that sort of perspective, because again, I do consider them, many of them, my allies. And I haven't, there's no, you know, there's no theme I've noticed in which like they've been harmful overall. I just don't see the use in it. And I'd be willing to like listen to somebody's perspective on it and like be corrected if something, if they could demonstrate more or less uh, that sort of use of a model to me.
Well, to bring the theology part, I can actually bring this to bear here, but it's it's one of those things where if you read, especially once you get into John, you have your rabbinic, or not John, uh, Mark. You have your rabbinical tradition on display, and the way Jesus would argue would be in that tradition, and I find dialectical materialism to be in that same vein. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I actually think that's a way to
Mm-hmm.
deal with truth. But if you're going, as you said, teleological, if you already have your conclusion, or your this is meant to be stack, your stack of this is meant to be's, um, to properly define teleological,
Mm-hmm.
then nothing is meant to be. It just is,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we depart a bit. Um, and if you get too far into that, you find yourself running for UKIP.
Yeah.
And yes, a lot of them are comrades, and I'm okay with that. And fine, I'm in that. I'll be in that group if that's what it requires at any given time.
Yeah. Yeah. We can't have purity tests here. So I guess we got to keep in the dialectical materialists. It is interesting though that, you know, you bring that up, how we're skeptical of that teleology, because this aligns really well with something I talked about with Ryan Bell on one of my streams. You know, in trying to build community, and
Yeah,
oftentimes, you know, say cross the aisle and build comradeship with, say, religious believers, um, because, you know, one of the things I think Ryan said he found really useful when he was a Christian, like somebody who is more of a what's the term? Liberation theology.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like part of the usefulness of that perspective of the world was that there was a teleology there, not that it gave, you know, an accurate depiction of the world to come, but that, you know, there was this very clear path forward, and it was very easy to become motivated and help motivate other folks in a movement towards a particular goal. And in a sense, like, humanism kind of lacks that teleology, which is very disappointing. And like in all of humanism's amorphousnesses, you know, it's very hard to, you know, coalesce towards a unifying vision. And as you know, as much as I'd like to believe that, you know, developing a science-based worldview could unify everyone, it's not a very useful pathway towards, you know, developing a useful movement towards, you know, something that I would think would be important for, you know, liberating the people who need to be liberated. And so in that sense, like, the teleology is at least pragmatically useful, if not, you know, epistemologically informative.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you, and I'm just going, well, you've pretty much nailed that. It's like,
right.
My argument is that there are people who are trying to develop the humanistic reasoning, the humanistic development, trying to develop the development, right? Trying to develop the humanistic I guess teleology really is my best word. I wanted to try and not use it again. But liberation theology has a lot that borrows from, I hate to ever say Alex Jones actually got something right.
Oh no.
But I mean, liberation theology does borrow a lot from Marxism. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily depending on where you are on that neo-Marxism. You have your Catholic communism, which the Pope came out of, the current Pope. There's not really a better way to put it. There is an actual term, and it's completely blanking. But you're right in that it's a useful metric. Metric is the word I wanted. Mm-hmm. Metric for the win. Trying to develop a useful metric for moving forward. The Humanist Manifesto. Does anybody remember anything it said? I sure don't.
Yeah.
Of course, my memory is Swiss cheese right now. Anyway, but well, I wasn't going to say it on air, but I am going to say it on air. I just got over about a week of pneumonia, and I'm still not quite here yet. So I do apologize.
Well, while you're trying to come up with those words, I'm wondering, you know, since you seem to understand, you know, say liberation theology better than me, and since you practically have a degree in theology anyway.
Oh God, that's what a punishment. Okay.
You know, I'm being facetious there, but you know, coming from like a trans perspective, I'm wondering if you have seen any like reactionary strains or problems with that sort of contingent of, you know, liberationists, you know, because it does follow from, you know, a fairly religious worldview. And like I've actually argued with people, like I had Eli on my channel to argue over, like, you know, if religion was necessarily bad, or like, you know, are all churches bad and stuff. And I'm moving away from that, but, you know, I'm still open to the idea that having sort of a religious metaphysics may cause some necessarily um, reactionary worldviews to stem out from that.
Um, that is a much harder question than you may have thought it was.
Yeah.
Uh, the basic answer is no. I have not had any problems with that. When my prior girlfriend, the person I was living with for a few years, was starting to get very active through her church, which was which had which was very much a liberation theology type church, even
Mm-hmm.
though, you know, it's white Polish people on the east side of Buffalo. You know, um, it was a liberation theology type church, and they got very active in trans issues, which maybe everything. This is where people start to say, "Well, everything happens for a reason." You know,
Yeah. Well, you
just
know,
sort of the
yeah,
I wouldn't have been around her if she was anti-trans at the time,
yeah.
but yeah,
Well,
she really got into it. She started buying the T-shirts and everything. I'm like, okay,
yep,
someday I'll have to tell her what's going on in my head.
yep. Well, you know, from my perspective, you know, like one of the people, you know, some of the most involved people in, say, my graduate labor union, like one of my best friends in the union there is Catholic, and we've cracked jokes across the bow at each other, but like, you know, we're still in for like the same type of goal, you know, fighting so graduate students can afford to work. Um, you know, as far as I'm concerned, like, you know, Christian metaphysics has almost nothing to do um, with like developing this towards this type of movement that will ultimately be useful. Uh, in our case, on my campus, to help like get rid of student fees and make it so we don't have to pay money to be able to work as employees to the university. So
I'm unfit. My uh, I wish I understood this stuff more because I do not understand how universities work now. Most of my work was in the 80s. My theology stuff was granted in the 2000s, but that was all on scholarship. So,
yeah, well, since we started the stream, we can circle back around and end on, you know, some of the things. You know, I haven't just been working on my thesis in defense. Um, uh, so graduate students are often the teachers at universities. They're usually graders. Um, they're research assistants. They do a lot of tasks that need to get done for the university, and that the university wouldn't be able to perform its function without graduate student
oh,
employees.
I see what you're saying. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, the first Mrs. Abbey was one of those. That's where I met
Okay.
her. Yeah, I met her at Stony Brook, and she was teaching. I was a student,
Oh, nice.
and and
Right.
the rest is history.
Yeah. So, you know, this student union, the one at CU Boulder, from what I understand, was actually very important in helping raise like stipends about 5 years ago, because it was like half the cost of living in Boulder, which the cost of living in Boulder is atrocious. But but now we have to pay like student fees, and I shouldn't say we because I'm done, but
Mhm.
I'll say we, just in solidarity with my union. We have to pay student fees, and we get taxed on that money before we pay it to the union, and we're basically paying to be employees to the university, which I don't feel is particularly fair. But the good news with that is, we're unionizing. There are other unions across the country that are unionizing for graduate school. Harvard, as far as I know, has been on strike since the beginning of December, fighting for like discrimination protections and I think healthcare. And UC Santa Cruz has also been on strike since the beginning of December, and I'm in full support of both of those. UCS SC is fighting for um, a cost of living adjustment in their stipends, and I'm hoping
Uh,
both of those strikes are successful, because if those are successful, maybe that will develop a good teleology, because that is something we at CU Boulder can point to in helping you know gather momentum. Say, hey, these student fees, well, these folks at Harvard struck for this cause and they got this outcome. These folks at UCSC struck for this cause and got this outcome. And so, like, this is what we are going to fight for. And, broadly, any success for like workers like that is a success in my eyes, and it helps build momentum, like, towards talking to other fellow workers about like the same types of issues.
well, as someone who comes out of the queer community, I know a lot of people don't like the word, but I'm 54. Sue me. Uh, we called ourselves that for a long time. Um, coming coming out of the queer community, believe it or not, that's kind of how that happened. This step happened, this step happened, this step happened. You can point to this, you can point to that. And yeah, maybe there is self-made teleology.
Mm-hmm.
That does I know that term does not work. Solipsistic teleology.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you're a brain in the vat, Chris, then it's a flat teleology. It's a singular timeline that goes nowhere. It's a circle. It's a circle that extends to a point,
Yeah,
but nonetheless may be useful.
you're gonna make me sing then. Yesterday a child came out to wonder. the, I think that actually is not my bad Joni Mitchell. The wrapping it around to the solipsism is actually a good place to stop. We
All
just hit
right,
we just hit just under an hour, so let's go
all
with
right.
that. I have slightly more at the end here, but of course I have to do the YouTube pair, which is, if you like this, please consider giving it a like, subscribe, hit the bell if you're so inclined. Make a comment even if you hate me, because the algorithm likes comments even if you hate me. And
I'll
even if
make
I
a comment.
even if I delete it, it actually counts. So
Oh,
go figure.
nice. That's why
Uh,
Steve Shives is so successful.
we
No
go.
aspersions on Steve. I love Steve. I'm basically ripping off his background being over here.
You are. If you just put Trek, actually, you're
Yeah.
fine.
I love you, Steve, if you're watching this.
I'll go back and watch mine with Steve. We talked about the blocking thing right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the where did I go? Uh, uh,
We were
uh,
just talking about leaving comments.
Perdus interruptus. No, Invictus interruptus. Um, the um, And I'm really going to start pushing for my Patreon now, but once the new year starts, because I need money. That's a pretty good reason. Um, I've been working. I've been working hard. I do a lot of research on the people who come on, except Jerb. I have no
That's
idea.
fair.
I have no idea where he's going anywhere anytime he comes on. So,
That makes two of us.
so I thankfully I had a book prepared to put up in front of him, which is The Water Thief by Nicholas Suter, which I would highly recommend. You can get that on Amazon, and he's not paying me anything for that, although he is coming on in February. So I'm going to be pushing. I don't know yet if I'm doing anything special for the Patreon. I think what I might do is, since I have like a 15-minute back and forth with whoever's on, I might record some of that and put that on as extra. I really hate to have anything that I record for this be behind paywall. It just does not fit my socialist mindset well enough. So, but I also got to eat. So, that's about it. It was extremely important for me to have you on as my New Year's Eve person. I didn't think about it Tuesday. I didn't look out ahead that Tuesdays was going to put me on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. But I'm glad it did. And I'm glad I brought you on for the last person, because if not for you, I wouldn't be doing this.
Oh, I'm very honored, and Happy New Year's to everyone watching, and to you, Chris.
To you, and again, to Ari. I'm guessing that's the person's name. You said it once.
Yeah, it's Ari.
Ari?
Yeah, Chris says Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, buddy.
So
I recognize that voice.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Chris.
Yes. I'm sorry. I totally got thrown there. Yes, and Happy New Year to everybody out there. You'll see a little bit of difference. I'm going HD as soon as the next video starts. Hello.
I can't hear you because Jeremiah's got headphones on.
A child is born to us.
Yes.
That's a week. It's a week late, isn't it?
And this child wants bickies. So.
He's a shit buddy.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Christy.
All right.
And hopefully I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye to everybody. Remember, you matter, your voice matters, and your life matters. And Happy New Year once again. Bye.